English Daily, the podcast.
Your English journey starts now.
Hey there, welcome back to English Daily Podcast. I'm Jack, and I am absolutely thrilled to be here with you today.
And I'm Anna, your co-host and your partner in this English learning journey. Jack, I've been looking forward to this episode for weeks now because we're tackling something that hits incredibly close to home for so many of our listeners.
Absolutely, Anna. You know, we've received hundreds of messages from people in their 30s, 40s, even 50s who feel like their English skills are slipping away like sand through their fingers. They say things like, "I used to be so fluent, but now I struggle to find words," or "I feel like I'm going backwards." Does that resonate with you, Anna?
Oh, absolutely, Jack. I hear it all the time in our community messages. And honestly, I experienced it myself when I was in my early 30s. I had lived abroad for several years and had achieved this beautiful level of fluency that I was really proud of. And then I moved back to my home country. Within about a year, I could literally feel my skills diminishing. It was terrifying, honestly. I felt like I was losing a part of myself.
I completely understand that feeling, Anna. It's like watching your own abilities fade away and feeling helpless to stop it. And that's exactly why we're here today. We're going to share 5 powerful daily habits that will protect your English fluency from stagnation, no matter how busy life gets or how many years have passed since you were at your peak fluency.
That's right, Jack. These aren't complicated strategies that require hours of your time or expensive courses. They're simple, practical things you can incorporate into your daily routine, even when you're exhausted from work or family responsibilities.
Perfect. And we're going to frame this around something called the use it or lose it mechanism. This is a concept that explains exactly why our language skills deteriorate when we don't practice, and more importantly, how we can combat it with simple daily actions.
The use it or lose it concept is crucial for every language learner to understand, Jack. It's not just a catchy phrase. It's backed by neuroscience and real-world experience. We'll explain exactly how it works and why these 5 habits are so effective at countering it.
Before we dive in, a quick reminder that if you're listening to this and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, because we release new episodes every single week with tips, strategies, and conversations just like this one. Also, don't forget to leave us a review if you find this helpful. It really helps other English learners find our podcast.
All right, Jack, let's get started. I personally can't wait to share these habits with our listeners because they've completely transformed my own English maintenance routine.
Okay, Anna, let's start with what I consider the most critical habit of all, daily speaking practice. This is absolutely non-negotiable if you want to maintain your fluency, and here's why.
I'm all ears, Jack. Why is speaking so important compared to the other skills?
You can understand English perfectly, even at a native level, but if you stop speaking it regularly, your spoken fluency will decline dramatically within just a few months. It's like a muscle that atrophies when you don't use it. The neural pathways that control speech production literally weaken from disuse.
That's fascinating and a little scary. So even if I'm still understanding everything perfectly, my ability to actually produce spoken English could be declining right now?
Exactly, Anna. And this is where the use it or lose it mechanism kicks in hard. Your brain forms neural pathways for speaking, and those pathways weaken when they're not reinforced regularly. It's not just about forgetting words, it's about losing the muscle memory that allows you to speak smoothly and automatically without hesitation.
That makes so much sense. And I know what a lot of our listeners are thinking right now. But Jack, I don't have anyone to practice with. I live in a country where no one speaks English. What do you tell them?
Here's the beautiful thing. You don't need another person. You can practice speaking English alone, and it's still incredibly effective. I've been doing this technique for years, and it works wonders.
Do tell, Jack. What's your technique?
I'll talk to myself in English while I'm cooking, while I'm driving, while I'm taking a walk around the neighborhood. It feels a bit silly at first, I won't lie, but the benefits are enormous. You're keeping those neural pathways active, you're maintaining your flow, and you're reinforcing vocabulary in meaningful context.
I do something similar, Jack, but I take it a step further. I have full conversations with myself, both sides of the dialogue. I'll pretend I'm discussing a topic with a friend, or I'm explaining my opinion on something to a colleague. It really helps because you're not just producing single sentences, you're maintaining the ability to have extended conversations with logical flow and coherent arguments.
That's brilliant, Anna. And for those who are a bit more advanced, try doing this without any preparation. Don't script what you're going to say. Just let it flow naturally. That's how you're going to catch those areas where you're hesitating or losing fluency. That's where the real work happens.
You know what else works great, Jack? Recording myself. I know, it can be cringeworthy to listen back to yourself at first. Your voice sounds strange to you and you notice every little imperfection, but it's one of the most powerful tools for improvement because it's completely objective.
Such great advice, Anna. When you listen back, you can identify specific problems. Maybe you're using too many fillers like and or maybe your pronunciation has slipped in certain areas. Maybe you're speaking too slowly or losing your train of thought mid-sentence. These are all things you can fix once you're aware of them.
Here's a pro tip from my own experience. Try to speak for at least 5 minutes every single day. Even if it's just 5 minutes, it's better than nothing. Consistency is what matters here, not the length of your practice session. 20 minutes once a week won't give you the same benefits as 5 minutes every single day.
I completely agree, Anna. And I want to add something important here. Don't be afraid of making mistakes during these practice sessions. In fact, embrace them. When you're practicing alone, there's no embarrassment, no judgment. These mistakes are golden because they're showing you exactly where you need to focus your attention.
Such an important mindset shift, Jack. So many adults are terrified of making mistakes, but mistakes are actually proof that you're pushing yourself, that you're trying to access language that isn't yet automatic. That's how you grow. That's how you improve.
To wrap up this habit, speak every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. Talk to yourself, narrate your day, have imaginary conversations. Your fluency will thank you for it. The use it or lose it mechanism means that every day you don't speak is a day your skills get a little weaker.
And remember, Jack is living proof that you can maintain incredible fluency through self-talk alone. He's been doing this for years, and his spoken English is absolutely fantastic.
Okay, so we've established that speaking daily is crucial. But what about vocabulary? That's often the first thing people feel slipping away, right, Anna?
Definitely, Jack. There's this phenomenon called passive vocabulary versus active vocabulary. You might understand thousands of words when you hear or read them. That's your passive vocabulary. But the words you actually use when you speak or write, that's your active vocabulary. And that's what tends to shrink first.
That's fascinating, Anna. So even if I still understand words when I hear them, I might not be able to access them quickly when I need to speak. That's what people describe as the tip of the tongue phenomenon, right?
Exactly. You've hit on something really important, Jack. And this is where the use it or lose it mechanism is very real. Words that you don't use regularly get pushed deeper into your memory, and it becomes harder and harder to retrieve them. It's like files buried in a disorganized filing cabinet. You know they're there, but you can't find them when you need them.
So what does active vocabulary building look like in practice, Anna? How can someone actually maintain and even expand their active vocabulary on a daily basis without it becoming overwhelming?
Great question, Jack. The key is to focus on words that you're likely to use, not just any random words from a dictionary. Think about topics that are relevant to your life, your work, your interests, your conversations. What words do you need regularly in your daily life? Focus on those.
I love that practical approach, Anna. And I think another really important element is using new words in context right away. Just reading a word and its definition isn't enough. You need to actually use it in a sentence, ideally multiple sentences throughout the day, so your brain makes that strong connection.
Here's what I do, Jack. Every day, I pick one or two new words or phrases, and I make a conscious effort to use them in my conversations or in my self talk throughout the day. If I learn the phrase drive home a point, I try to use it in at least three different contexts throughout the day. That repetition is what makes it stick.
That's a fantastic strategy, Anna. And I think another technique that's really powerful is what I call word clustering. Instead of learning individual words in isolation, learn words in groups. Learn synonyms, antonyms, related phrases, idioms that use similar concepts. This creates a web in your memory that makes retrieval much easier.
Oh, I love that idea of word clustering, Jack. It makes so much sense. For example, if you're learning the word happy, you could also learn elated, joyful, content, delighted, and their opposites like sad, miserable, disappointed. When one word fails to come to mind, your brain has all these connected words to fall back on. It's like having backup generators when the main power goes out.
Exactly. And I want to add something crucial here. It's better to deeply learn 20 words and use them regularly than to superficially learn 200 words and forget them within a week. Quality over quantity, always. Your brain can only hold so much at once, so make every word count.
That's so true, Jack. And here's another tip that has transformed my vocabulary learning. Keep a vocabulary journal, but not just a list of words with translations. Write the words in context. Write example sentences that are personal to you. Write about how you could use this word in a real conversation. That extra effort makes a massive difference in retention.
I completely agree, Anna. And you know what I find really helpful? Using vocabulary apps during small pockets of time throughout your day, waiting in line, on your commute, during your lunch break. Even just 5 minutes a day adds up to over 30 hours of vocabulary practice per year.
Definitely, Jack. But let me caution against one thing. Don't just memorize flashcards in isolation. That might build your passive vocabulary, but it's not going to help your active vocabulary much. You need to actually produce the words, not just recognize them. The difference between passive and active vocabulary is the difference between understanding a recipe and being able to cook the dish.
Such an important distinction, Anna. So, to summarize this habit, focus on words you'll actually use, learn them in context, practice using them throughout the day, and build word clusters to help your brain retrieve them more easily. Your vocabulary is like a garden. If you don't tend to it regularly, weeds will take over, and the beautiful plants you carefully cultivated will wither.
But with daily attention, it will flourish and bring you joy for years to come. Every new word you add to your active vocabulary is an investment in your future self.
All right, Anna, let's move on to our third habit, and this one is all about listening. I think sometimes we underestimate how important listening practice is for maintaining overall fluency, not just comprehension.
You're absolutely right, Jack. Listening is the foundation that supports everything else. When you listen to English regularly, you're not just improving your comprehension, you're also absorbing the rhythm, the intonation, the natural flow and cadence of the language. It all gets stored in your brain and influences your own speaking in ways you might not even realize.
And here's the thing about the use it or lose it mechanism with listening. Your brain becomes less efficient at processing English sounds when you don't expose it regularly. You might find yourself needing to ask people to repeat themselves more often, or feeling completely lost in conversations even though you used to understand easily. That's your listening comprehension declining.
That's so true, Jack. And it's especially noticeable with different accents. I personally experienced this when I spent a year in Australia after being used to American English. My brain had to recalibrate, and it was hard at first. Then, when I moved back, I noticed I struggled with American accents again for a while. Your brain needs regular exposure to stay sharp and adaptable.
So what does effective daily listening practice look like? Because I know a lot of people say, just watch English movies or listen to English podcasts, but that's not specific enough. We need actual strategies that will produce real results.
Great point, Jack. Simply having English on in the background isn't as effective as active listening. What I recommend is dedicated listening time, at least 20 minutes a day where you're fully focused, not just half listening while doing something else. Multitasking doesn't work for language learning.
I love that distinction, Anna. Active listening versus passive exposure. And here's something I do that I find incredibly useful. I vary my listening materials. Some days I listen to news podcasts for more formal English and complex sentence structures. Other days I listen to casual conversations or entertainment content like sitcoms. This keeps my brain adaptable and exposed to different registers.
That's a smart approach, Jack. And I want to add something about the importance of listening to material that's slightly above your current level. It challenges your brain and helps you expand your capabilities. But here's the key. Don't go too far above your level or you'll get frustrated and want to give up. The sweet spot is where you understand most of it, but still encounter some challenging vocabulary and complex sentence structures.
Absolutely. And here's a technique I find incredibly useful. Shadowing. This is where you listen to a native speaker and then immediately repeat what they say, trying to match their intonation, their rhythm, their speed, their expression. It's like a workout for your speaking muscles, but it also supercharges your listening comprehension at the same time.
Oh, I adore shadowing, Jack. It really helps train your ear to catch native speed speech, which is often much faster than the controlled speech in textbooks or educational materials. And here's another tip. After you listen to something, summarize what you heard in your own words. This forces you to process and internalize the information, rather than just letting it wash over you without retention.
That's a great active listening strategy, Anna, and I think it's also incredibly important to listen to content that genuinely interests you. If you're passionate about true crime, listen to true crime podcasts in English. If you love cooking, watch cooking shows in English. If you're into sports, follow sports commentary in English. Interest keeps you engaged, and engagement leads to better retention and more enjoyable practice.
Definitely, Jack. And here's something I want our listeners to consider. Create an English audio environment. When you're commuting, exercising, doing housework, have English playing in your ears whenever possible. It doesn't all need to be focused, dedicated listening, but your brain is still absorbing the language patterns even in the background.
That's such a practical tip, Anna. And I'll add one more important point. Don't just listen to one type of content or one accent. Mix it up as much as possible. Listen to interviews, documentaries, dramas, comedies, educational content, business presentations. Each type uses different vocabulary, different speaking styles, different rhythms. You want to be exposed to all of them so your brain becomes flexible.
To sum up this habit, Jack, listen actively every day for at least 20 minutes, vary your materials as much as possible, try shadowing when you can, and create an English audio environment throughout your day. Your ears will stay sharp and your comprehension will remain strong for years to come.
And remember, listening isn't just about understanding. It's about feeding your brain the raw material it needs to produce English fluently. Input leads to output. You can't produce what you've never absorbed. All right, Anna. We've covered speaking, vocabulary building, and listening. Now let's talk about reading. I think this is often the easiest habit for people to maintain because you can do it almost anywhere, but there are still strategies to make it more effective for fluency maintenance.
I agree, Jack. Reading is wonderful because it's so accessible. You can read anywhere, anytime, whether you're waiting for an appointment or relaxing before bed. But here's what many people don't realize. The type of reading you do matters enormously. Reading the news is great, but it won't expose you to conversational English. Reading fantasy novels is enjoyable, but the vocabulary might not be practical for everyday conversations or professional settings.
That's such a good point, Anna. So what's the best approach to reading for fluency maintenance? Should we all just read Harry Potter over and over?
Jack, as much as I love Harry Potter, that's not quite what I'm suggesting. I recommend a mixed diet, Jack. Read some nonfiction for information and formal vocabulary, some fiction for narrative and emotion and storytelling language, and some magazines or blogs for casual, contemporary language that people actually use in everyday conversations. This variety exposes you to different registers and keeps your reading skills versatile.
I love that idea of a mixed diet for reading. And here's another strategy that has worked really well for me. Read aloud sometimes. I know we talked about speaking practice separately, but reading aloud combines reading and speaking, and it helps reinforce vocabulary in an incredibly powerful way.
That's an excellent point, Jack. When you read aloud, you're engaging both your visual processing and your verbal processing at the same time. You're seeing the word, saying it, and hearing it all at once. That's a triple whammy for memory retention. It's like creating multiple pathways to the same piece of information.
Exactly. And I think another really important aspect is reading at the right level. If everything you read is too easy, you're not challenging yourself and you won't grow. If everything is too hard, you'll get frustrated and want to give up entirely. The sweet spot is where you understand most of it, but still encounter some challenging vocabulary and sentence structures. This is where learning happens.
That's the I+1 principle, Jack. Reading at your current level plus a little bit of challenge. It's the zone of proximal development, where growth happens. And here's something I find really helpful when reading. When you encounter new words in context, don't stop to look them up immediately. Try to guess the meaning from context first, using the surrounding sentences as clues. Then, check later. This builds your ability to infer meaning, which is a crucial skill for real-world comprehension.
Such valuable advice, Anna. And I think it's also really important to read regularly, not just occasionally. Even 15 minutes a day is better than 2 hours once a week. Consistency matters more than duration because daily practice keeps your brain in English mode, while sporadic marathons create an on-again, off-again pattern that can be counterproductive.
Absolutely, Jack. And here's a fun idea. Start a reading challenge. Maybe it's one book a month, or maybe it's reading for 15 minutes every single day for a year. Having a specific goal gives you motivation and helps you track your progress over time. There's something incredibly satisfying about checking off your reading time each day.
I love that idea, Anna. And for those who feel like they don't have enough time to read, I suggest reading during what I call dead time, those small moments when you're waiting for appointments, riding the bus, sitting in a parking lot. Those small pockets of time add up incredibly quickly over the course of a week or month.
Definitely, Jack. And here's something for our more advanced listeners to try. Try reading without a dictionary at all. Just power through, getting the gist of things, even if you don't understand every single word. Then go back and read again, focusing specifically on the parts you didn't understand the first time. This builds reading fluency and comprehension stamina, your ability to read for extended periods without getting tired or lost.
That's a great strategy for building reading speed as well, Anna. And speed matters. When you read faster, you can consume more content in the same amount of time, which means more exposure to vocabulary and language patterns. Speed and comprehension can actually improve together with practice.
To wrap up this habit, read every day, even if it's just for 15 minutes, mix up your materials to get variety, read aloud sometimes to reinforce learning, and don't be afraid to challenge yourself with slightly difficult material. Your reading skills will stay sharp, and you'll constantly be adding new vocabulary to your mental database.
And remember, every book, every article, every blog post is a conversation with the author, a chance to absorb their language, their style, their ideas, their expertise. Make reading a daily habit and watch how it transforms not just your reading, but your overall English fluency. Okay, Anna, we've covered 4 fantastic habits so far: speaking, vocabulary building, listening, and reading. Now let's talk about our 5th and final habit, and I think this one is often overlooked by language learners, despite being incredibly powerful: writing.
You're so right, Jack. Writing is the habit that people most often drop when they get busy or life gets chaotic, but it's actually one of the most powerful tools for maintaining fluency. When you write, you're processing language at a deeper level than when you speak or listen. You're forced to slow down and think carefully about every word choice.
I completely agree, Anna. And here's why writing is so powerful. It forces you to slow down and think about your language choices in a way that conversation doesn't. In spontaneous conversation, you don't have time to deliberate, you just react in the moment. But in writing, you can consider word choice, sentence structure, organization, cohesion. This deliberate practice strengthens your language skills in a completely unique way.
Exactly, Jack. And writing also creates a permanent record of your language use. You can look back at what you wrote a month ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, and see your progress with your own eyes. That visual evidence of improvement is incredibly motivating and helps you see how far you've actually come.
That's such a great point, Anna. And I think another enormous benefit of writing is that it helps you identify your weak spots with perfect clarity. When you're writing, you'll notice areas where you're hesitating, where you can't find the right word, where you're making the same grammatical mistakes over and over. Those are exactly the areas you need to focus on in your practice.
Absolutely, Jack. So, what does daily reflective writing look like in practice? It doesn't have to be a formal essay or a perfect piece of writing. It can be a journal entry about your day, a few paragraphs about your thoughts and feelings, or even just a list of things you're grateful for in English. The key is that it's personal and meaningful to you.
I love that idea, Anna. Keep it simple and personal. Write about your day, your thoughts, your feelings, your hopes, your concerns. This makes writing feel meaningful rather than like a chore or homework, and it helps you develop the ability to express yourself authentically in English, which is what fluency is really all about.
Here's another tip, Jack. Try writing about the same topics you listen to or read about. This reinforces the vocabulary and language patterns you've encountered in your other practice, and it helps you make connections between different aspects of your English learning. Everything becomes interconnected.
That's a great strategy, Anna. And I think it's also really important to write even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. That's when you're building discipline and pushing through mental barriers. Some of my best writing sessions happened when I really didn't want to do it, but did it anyway.
Definitely, Jack. And here's something for our listeners to consider. Share your writing with others whenever possible. Join online language exchange communities. Find a writing partner who can give you feedback, or even just post on social media in English. Getting feedback, whether positive or constructive, is incredibly valuable for improvement.
That's such great advice, Anna. And I'll add this. Don't worry about making mistakes in your first draft. That's what editing is for. Just get your ideas down first without stopping to correct everything. Then go back and correct errors in a second pass. The act of identifying and correcting your own mistakes is itself one of the most powerful learning exercises available.
I completely agree, Jack. Self-correction is one of the most effective learning strategies. When you identify your own mistakes and fix them yourself, you're much less likely to make them in the future. You're taking ownership of your learning.
And to make this habit stick, I recommend setting a specific time for writing, just like you would for any other important activity in your life. Maybe it's first thing in the morning with your coffee. Maybe it's before bed as a way to process your day. Whatever works for you, make it a non-negotiable part of your routine.
Perfect way to end this habit, Jack. Write every day, even if it's just a few sentences. Make it personal, make it reflective, and watch how it transforms not just your writing skills, but your overall English fluency. Writing is the glue that holds all the other skills together.
So, Anna, we've covered our 5 daily habits in detail, but I want to take a moment to tie it all together with this use it or lose it mechanism we mentioned at the very beginning. Can you explain what's actually happening in our brains when we stop practicing English?
Great question, Jack. When you first learned English and achieved fluency, your brain created neural pathways, essentially highways for language information to travel. The more you use these pathways, the stronger and more efficient they became. But here's the thing about neural pathways. The ones that aren't used regularly start to weaken and fade, just like a path in the forest that nobody walks on anymore. Over time, it disappears entirely.
That's such a vivid analogy, Anna. So even though someone might have achieved native-level fluency at some point in their life, without regular practice, those neural pathways deteriorate. It's not that they lose the language entirely, but the pathways become less efficient.
Exactly, Jack. And what's particularly interesting and a bit scary is that it happens faster than you might think. Research suggests that within just a few months of not using a language, you can start to see measurable declines in fluency and comprehension. Within a year, the difference can be absolutely dramatic. You might find yourself struggling to find words that used to come effortlessly.
That's both scary and motivating, Anna. Scary because it shows how quickly we can lose what we've worked so hard to gain, but motivating because it also shows that the solution is beautifully simple. Just use it. These 5 daily habits are basically giving your brain a daily workout, keeping those neural pathways strong, efficient, and ready to use at a moment's notice.
Absolutely, Jack. And here's what I find really hopeful and encouraging for our listeners. Even if you've let your skills decline significantly, you can absolutely rebuild them. Those neural pathways aren't completely gone after a period of disuse, they're just weakened and faded. With consistent practice, you can restore them and even strengthen them beyond their previous level.
That's such an important message for our listeners, Anna. No matter how long it's been since you practiced seriously, you can get back to your best level or even beyond. It might take some time and patience, but it's absolutely possible. The brain is remarkably adaptable.
Definitely, Jack. And that's exactly why these 5 habits are so powerful. They're not about becoming perfect or learning increasingly advanced English that you might never need. They're about maintaining what you have and preventing further decline. Here's an important truth. It's much, much easier to maintain fluency than to rebuild it after it's been lost. That's why starting these habits now, before you notice significant decline, is so incredibly important.
Well said, Anna. So let's make a commitment together. Use it every single day, or we will lose what we've worked so incredibly hard to gain. Our fluency is precious, and these 5 habits are how we protect it. Now, Anna, let's move on to our vocabulary breakdown section. We've used quite a few important phrases and expressions throughout today's episode. Let's highlight some that we think our listeners should add to their active vocabulary.
Great idea, Jack. Let's start with some of the key phrases we used when discussing these habits and the use it or lose it mechanism.
First up, use it or lose it. This phrase describes the mechanism where skills or abilities that aren't practiced regularly will diminish and eventually disappear over time. It's a powerful concept for understanding exactly why daily practice matters so much.
Next, neural pathways. This refers to the connections in your brain that form when you learn and practice skills, including language. Think of them like roads or highways. The more you travel them, the stronger, wider, and more efficient they become.
Next, tip of the tongue. This is that incredibly frustrating feeling when you know a word exists and you can almost picture it, but you can't quite retrieve it at that exact moment. It's a common experience for language learners and a clear sign that you need more practice with that particular vocabulary.
Next, active vocabulary. This is the set of words you can readily and quickly use when speaking or writing. It's fundamentally different from passive vocabulary, words you understand when you hear or read them, but don't typically use yourself.
Next, word clustering. This is a learning strategy where you learn words in meaningful groups, focusing on synonyms, antonyms, related terms, and phrases that share conceptual connections. It helps with retrieval because when one word fails to come to mind, all the connected words become available as alternatives.
Next, shadowing. This is a listening and speaking technique where you listen to a native speaker and then immediately repeat what they said, trying to match their pronunciation, intonation, rhythm, and even facial expressions. It's excellent for simultaneously improving both listening comprehension and speaking fluency.
Next, Passive exposure. This refers to having language playing in the background without actively focusing on it or trying to understand it. It's less effective than active, focused listening, but still provides some benefit and helps keep your brain familiar with English sounds.
Next, I+1 principle. This is a learning concept that says you should read or listen to material that's slightly above your current level. Not too easy, not too hard. The +1 represents the small challenge that helps you grow and expand your abilities without becoming frustrated.
Next, to infer meaning. This means to guess or deduce the meaning of a word or phrase from the surrounding context rather than immediately looking it up in a dictionary. It's a crucial skill for reading comprehension in the real world and something that improves dramatically with practice.
Next, to process at a deeper level. This means to engage with language more thoughtfully and thoroughly, analyzing and truly internalizing it rather than just passively receiving it. Writing particularly promotes this kind of deep processing.
Next, neural pathways that aren't used regularly start to weaken. This is the core concept behind the use it or lose it mechanism, the critical importance of consistent practice for maintaining language abilities.
Next, to diminish. This means to decrease or become gradually less over time. Skills can diminish significantly without regular practice and use.
Next, to rebuild. This means to restore something that has been lost or damaged. The wonderful news is that language skills can be rebuilt with consistent practice, even after long periods of neglect.
Next, to reinforce. This means to strengthen or support something, making it more solid and permanent. Daily practice reinforces neural pathways and makes them more resilient.
Next, to retrieve. This means to access information from your memory, to call it back when you need it. Being able to quickly retrieve vocabulary is a clear sign of strong, well-maintained active vocabulary.
Next, to hesitate. This means to pause before speaking or acting, often because you're unsure or searching for the right word. Frequent hesitation can be a sign that your fluency needs more daily practice.
Next, to atrophy. This is a medical term that means to weaken or waste away from lack of use. It's often used metaphorically for skills and abilities that aren't practiced.
Next, to fall back on. This means to use something as a backup or alternative when your first choice isn't available. Having word clusters gives you multiple words to fall back on when one isn't immediately retrievable.
Next, to power through. This means to continue despite difficulty, to push forward when things get challenging. When reading difficult material, power through to build your reading stamina and resilience.
Next, to make it stick. This means to make a habit permanent or lasting, to ensure it becomes a permanent part of your routine rather than something you do occasionally and then forget.
That's 20 fantastic vocabulary items, Anna. These are all practical, useful words and phrases that our listeners can start using in their daily English conversations and writing. Every single one is relevant to language learning and maintenance. All right, Anna, now let's move to our reflection questions. These are questions for our listeners to think about privately, perhaps discuss with a language partner, or even write about in their daily English journal as practice.
I love this section, Jack. Reflection is where real learning happens, when you think deeply about what you've learned and how it applies to your specific situation. Let's start with some questions about the habits we discussed today.
First question, which of the 5 habits do you currently practice most consistently? What makes this particular habit easier for you to maintain than the others? Is it the type of activity, the time of day, or something else entirely?
Second question, which habit do you struggle with the most? What specific obstacles are preventing you from practicing it daily? Is it time, motivation, resources, or something else? And most importantly, what could you do to overcome those specific obstacles?
Third question, think about a specific time in your life when you noticed your English skills declining. What were the circumstances that led to this? What did you wish you had done differently at that time to prevent or slow the decline?
Fourth question, how does the use it or lose it concept change your perspective on daily practice? Does it motivate you to be more consistent? Does it make you think differently about the importance of maintenance versus improvement?
Fifth question, if you could only choose one of these 5 habits to focus on, which would it be and why? Which habit do you think would have the biggest impact on your overall fluency if you really committed to it?
Sixth question, how could you adapt these 5 habits to fit your specific schedule and lifestyle? Think of practical, creative ways to incorporate at least some form of daily English practice, even on your busiest days. What small changes could make a big difference?
Seventh question, what topics or activities would make your English practice more enjoyable and engaging for you personally? Remember, engagement leads to much better retention, so think about what genuinely interests you and how you could incorporate English into those interests.
Eighth question, do you have any strategies for dealing with the fear of making mistakes when practicing English? How can you reframe mistakes as valuable opportunities for growth rather than embarrassing failures? What's your mindset around error making?
Ninth question, think about your ideal English-speaking self 1 year from now. What would your daily practice routine look like? What specific, concrete steps can you take today to begin moving toward that vision?
10th question, how can you create accountability for your English practice? Would a language partner, a study group, a mentor, or simply tracking your progress in a journal help you stay consistent? Who or what can help keep you motivated?
These questions are designed to help our listeners reflect deeply on their language learning journey and make concrete, specific plans for improvement. I encourage everyone to take some time with these questions, perhaps answer 1 or 2 in writing each day this week.
Absolutely, Jack. And remember, the most important thing is to start somewhere, anywhere, and be consistent. Even small daily efforts add up to absolutely remarkable results over time. You're building a habit that will serve you for the rest of your life.
Well, Anna, we've covered an incredible amount of ground today, haven't we?
We really have, Jack. I feel like we gave our listeners a comprehensive toolkit for protecting their English fluency as they get older. The use it or lose it mechanism is real and powerful, but as we've discussed in detail, it's also completely within our control to combat it with these simple daily habits.
That's exactly right, Anna. And I want to remind everyone listening, these 5 habits aren't about becoming perfect or achieving some impossibly advanced level of English that you might never actually need. They're about maintaining what you've already worked so incredibly hard to gain. They're about staying connected to a language that has opened so many doors for you.
I love that perspective, Jack. It's not about climbing to some new, higher peak. It's about protecting the mountain you've already climbed and ensuring you can always enjoy the view from the top. And honestly, once you make these habits part of your routine, they become completely second nature. You won't even have to think about them.
That's the ultimate goal, Anna. Make English practice as automatic as brushing your teeth or making your morning coffee. It's just something you do every day, without question, without debate, because it's simply part of who you are.
Before we go, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. We create this podcast because we genuinely want to help people, and knowing that you're out there learning and growing alongside us makes all the effort absolutely worth it.
Absolutely. And if you found this episode helpful, please share it with anyone you know who might benefit from these strategies. Word of mouth is how we grow our community, and the more people we can help, the better. This information could genuinely change someone's life.
And don't forget to subscribe to English Daily Podcast if you haven't already, and leave us a review. We read every single one, and your feedback directly helps us create better content that serves your specific needs.
That's right, and we'll be back next week with another episode full of tips, strategies, and conversations. Until then, remember to speak, listen, read, write, and reflect every single day. Your fluency is truly in your hands, and these 5 habits are the keys to protecting it.
Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. We truly appreciate you and your commitment to lifelong English learning. We'll see you next time on English Daily Podcast.
Take care. Keep practicing and never stop learning. You've got this.
Your learning journey doesn't stop here. Keep improving your English. click the next video or explore more episodes we've picked just for you. See you in the next lesson.